Graham Mermina here with WrestleRant and Bleacher Report. Today we're talking to the creator of Heels, Michael Waldron. Obviously, that's just a small sample size of everything that you've done over the course of your career so far, but excited to be chatting with you today, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Heels coming this Sunday as we're speaking right now to Netflix. This is a pretty big deal. The show's been around for a bit now, got two seasons, third season. Hopefully we will get at some point. We'll chat about that. But I mean, this just feels like the perfect timing. We know WWE Raw headed to Netflix in January. There's like a Mr. McMahon documentary, obviously the mastermind behind pro wrestling coming soon to Netflix. This just feels like the perfect timing right now for Heels to be joining the Netflix family, that is.
Yeah, it's amazing. We always said, oh, look, I'm so grateful to Stars for making the show, taking a chance on me. The show kicked off my career many, many years ago. And they let us make something that we were so proud of, and we kind of got away with murder on it. I just think ultimately, it didn't find, it wasn't, the audience wasn't able to find it, but I think the folks who did find it seemed to really, really respond to it. And especially the wrestling fans, because we made it with a lot of love for that world, mainly because wrestling was my first great love.
Mhm.
But we always said, we were like, man, if we were on Netflix, this would be the biggest show in the world. And now I'm like, oh shit. Like our bluff called.
Yeah.
So we'll find out. But I feel really good, and there's so much amazing wrestling content on Netflix and everything. So yeah, I think it's great timing.
I think you mentioned it right there. Excuse me, but the most obvious question with this coming to Netflix coming this weekend, you got to imagine this has got to increase the chances of a potential third season at some point, right?
I hope so. It's we obviously, the season two is not the end of the show,
Of
or
course
not the
not. Yeah.
end of the show. We end on a cliffhanger, and there's a lot of great story left to be told with a big ensemble cast. Um, I think that ultimately that'll be up to the audience, and if the audience finds it and responds to it, which I hope they do, we would love to make more. And I think that one of the exciting things about it being on Netflix and Netflix's relationship with the WWE is there's a real opportunity to integrate the WWE more fully into the show. Whereas
Hmm.
before we were kind of operating like the DWL, kind of like we were the little guys skirting around them.
Yeah.
Now we know that the WWE are big fans of the show, that they've watched it, and so I would be really excited to really fold them into the world of our show and see what that looks like.
Anyone that has seen the first two seasons of the show knows that Punk plays a pretty prominent role on the show in various episodes, that being CM Punk, Phil Brooks. One of his first major acting gigs was on Heels. He's going to be joining the Netflix family as well. He's on Monday Night Raw, which is joining Netflix in January. So if a third season is made, it seems like it'd be a lock that he could be potentially a part of it. I think that'd be pretty cool to see.
Punk is amazing. He's such a great actor. He's such a hard worker and just so lovely to be around. I got to know him way back when he actually auditioned for the lead role of Jack Spade
Wow,
a
yeah.
long time ago. And I watched him work with an acting coach and take such great strides in a very short time as an actor. And you're immediately like, oh, you see why these wrestlers go on to become the biggest movie stars in the world, because they are the hardest workers. They've had to work so hard to get where they are. And when we finally were lucky enough to make the show, we knew we had to get him in there somewhere as Ricky Rabies, and he makes the show feel real, and he shows up, and he's such a likable presence, and he just makes the cast better. So hell yeah, we take as much Punk as we can get given his schedule, is the truth.
It's funny too because the first season came out back in 2021. I think it was while the first season was still airing that he obviously made his triumphant return to the world of wrestling, like in the actual ring. Obviously, he's doing some in-ring stuff and heels, but that was like the first taste of anyone seeing Punk back in the ring doing anything associated with wrestling was heels. So, Michael, do you take any credit for that whatsoever? That you might have been the one to light the spark there to get Punk back in the wrestling world for the first time in 7 years.
Absolutely. I take all the credit. I take full credit. All of those pops are all me. No, I mean that's all Phil and you know and his I think nobody understands at least the modern wrestling audience and the
Mhm.
crowds better than him. And the greatest, probably the greatest compliments I ever got on the show was when he first read the scripts because and when we first met, because I was nervous. It's CM Punk. It's like
Yeah.
he's the fucking legend. And when he was like, "Yeah, you got it right. This is what it's like, and this is what and he talked about, well, this is what it was like in different stops along his own career. That's when I was like, wow, I can't. I just felt really proud because that's the kind of dude that you'd want to watch this show and say, yeah, this is the real thing.
You mentioned how wrestling was one of your first loves a little while ago, and Punk being a big star now. If there was anyone from that you either grew up watching or anyone that you're familiar with in the wrestling world today that you would want on a potential third season, are there any names that come to mind?
I mean, my favorites are I have two because I was a WCW kid. I was not just a WWF kid, is what I would say. I
That's how
was
you know
also
you're a real fan. If you mentioned WCW, that's a real fan right there.
yeah. So it's like Sting was really my guy.
That's cool.
And so it's like I would be watching Nitro and taping Raw or one or the other. So it's probably Sting or Shawn Michaels. I it just pound for Sting was I think what Batman and Superman are to most kids. That's
Mhm.
that's what Sting was to me growing up. And then just in terms of like pound for pound, the amount of like entertainment I've gotten from watching someone perform, Shawn Michaels, like I will just sit down. If I'm having lunch, I'll just pop on a ladder match or just pick any one of his matches and just watch it. There's just nothing I love more than watching him. So
I
probably one of
feel
those guys.
it would be cool to see more of these wrestlers in general, WWE wrestlers, whatever it might be, make that bridge over into the acting world. Obviously, we know of like the John Cenas and Batistas and the Rocks and people like that, but people like Punk, and we know I think it's been confirmed. I don't know if it's come out publicly, but like the Seth Rollins thing, rumored to be in the upcoming Captain America movie coming out next year. I think Punk might be among those group of people that it would be cool to see in the acting world, specifically like a Marvel project or something like that. Obviously, something you have a lot of experience with coming from Loki and Multiverse of Madness.
I would love. I've certainly spread the good word about what a great actor he is over there, and there's wrestling fans in the halls of Marvel, and we talk a lot about, I talk with those guys the parallels between what we do at Marvel and what the world of wrestling is are obvious. I
Yeah.
wasn't a comic book kid growing up. I was a wrestling fan, and I think that's why that was what prepared me to work in that Marvel world for so long.
I think you make a great point there. I think there's a lot of similarities for any wrestling fans that watch heels and then watch really any Marvel project, but specifically the stuff that you've been attached to, Loki, obviously, and Multiverse of Madness. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of similarities there. Was there anything specifically that you applied from being a wrestling fan growing up, but also working on heels? That while you were doing Loki and Multiverse of Madness, or really anything over the course of your career, I know you got a number of stuff coming up, the Chad Power show, a number of other stuff. but specifically Marvel, that you were able to apply those wrestling lessons to as far as storytelling goes and stuff like that.
Well, I think that, Heels is a show very much uh about making the turns from, heels becoming faces, faces becoming heels. In the pilot episode, Ace, who's kind of the big face and hero of the league, the audience turns on him
Hmm.
at the end. And is always fascinated by that. I think I remember as a little kid, uh, the Hogan NWO thing, obviously it's like the original Red Wedding, when Hogan turns to the NWO, and then the fake Sting thing. And is Sting a good guy or is Sting a bad guy and all of that. And the way that it played with, I feel like wrestling, because at that time the Sopranos and Mad Men and these shows did not exist yet.
Hmm.
And so wrestling was really the first like serialized TV, at least for like young boys,
Yeah.
that trafficking in anti-heroes like Walter White, like Breaking Bad, like
Hmm.
like Stone Cold is an anti-hero. And so Loki is a great example. Loki is a show about, can a villain become a hero? And so I'm always fascinated in like in the double turn, the Stone Cold Bret Hart Survivor Series. It's like that is such a brilliant feat of storytelling. The hero becomes the villain becomes the hero. Um, and I'm always on the lookout for that stuff. And I think, we tried to do that and Loki tried to do that in Doctor Strange, and just finding sort of moral complexity um in these characters. That's what was great about the Monday Night Wars, is I think that the performers evolved out of kind of the more comic booky, I'm purely good, I'm Hulk Hogan, or I'm purely bad, I'm Andre the Giant,
Hmm.
into slightly more morally complex. Like there's a little more nuance to these stories being told. And so I don't know. In the Marvel world, I'm always trying to do the same thing, and fortunately they're always game for it.
Yeah, it's so apparent in Loki, especially. I mean, he started out as one of the best villains in the MCU, and through your show and both seasons, telling that complete story there, it's definitely apparent. And hopefully we could see more of that in Heels with a potential third season. Obviously, even Robert Downey Jr. now coming back as Iron Man. I mean, that is the ultimate example of the biggest babyface going heel in Marvel. I mean, a lot of wrestling fans ate that up. That was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's the parallels are obvious, and that's why that's why I think that a show like Heels has a great shot on Netflix,
Yep.
because it's a show that you can watch and say, oh shit, this is kind of everything. Politics is wrestling, superhero movies is wrestling,
Yeah.
everything is wrestling. There's a great article many years ago, right as I was pitching the show, in the New York Times, I believe, that was titled "Everything is Wrestling."
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think it's correct. I think everything is wrestling, and that's why the WWE continues to be ahead of the curve. And that's why I'm really glad that this show's coming out on Netflix now when it
Yeah.
is.
Definitely, man. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And third season, or both seasons, first two seasons coming out on Netflix this coming Sunday. You got a lot going on between that, Chad Powers, everything else that you've done. It's amazing. You look at the resume of what you've put together between Loki, Doctor Strange, this show, Rick and Morty are literally all my favorite things. So seeing that you've had a hand in really all of them is cool to see. So congrats on all of that. I mean, what more can people look forward to from? I know you got your new company as well, the Anonymly Pictures. Heels coming out on Netflix. Anything Marvel related that you can share? I know everything's super top secret, but what can we look forward to you working on in the future?
Well, I think that, yeah, I mean, hopefully we get to do more of heels. That's
Hmm.
the if the audience tunes in, then we'd love to make more. And right now I'm in production on Chad Powers for Hulu, that Glenn Powell's starring in, which is uh which is going to be a wild ride. I
Hmm.
don't think anybody's ready for what that show is going to be. So it's a football comedy set in the world of college football, and it's going to be a blast.
Fantastic. Well, congrats on all the success, man. I appreciate the time. My girlfriend wanted me to tell you, Loki's literally her favorite show of all time. I still need to get her into Heels. I watched Heels myself, but she's like, just tell him Loki's my favorite thing ever. So
Yeah.
she wanted me to let you know.
Great. Thank you and thank her for me, and I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much, and best of luck with everything going forward.
All right. Have a good
Thanks,
day.
dude.